The twin moons of Valara Prime hung low in the sky, bathing the royal citadel in pale silver light. The air shimmered with quiet energy from the planet's defense grid. Yet beneath the calm beauty, fear spread like a silent fire. The monsters were coming. The people of Valara called them the Eaters, beings made of darkness older than stars. They didn't speak, didn't feel, didn't stop. They devoured whole worlds, turning them into dust. Every planet they visited became a graveyard of silence. Inside the high towers of the palace, Princess Lysera stood by the great balcony, her slender hands pressed against the glass wall. Her golden eyes looked at the stars, but her heart was far from calm. She could see strange movements in the dark space above the mountains, flashes of blue light, maybe ships, or maybe something worse. She had heard the council's whispers. The defense line has fallen, they said. The outer colonies are gone, and now the storm was coming for her world. Behind her, armored footsteps echoed softly. It was Sergeant Daniel Hayes, a human guard assigned to protect her after the treaty between Earth and Valara. Among the tall, graceful aliens, his broad shoulders and scarred armor looked out of place. Humans were rare here, strange to look at. But when Lysera's father, the Emperor, met the humans years ago, he had said something that many remembered. Humans are not the oldest race nor the strongest, but they fight as if they have nothing left to lose. Lysera turned when she heard Hayes stop near the balcony door. "Sergeant Hayes," she said, her voice soft but formal. "You fought these creatures before, didn't you?" Hayes nodded once. His face was calm, but his eyes held old shadows. "Yes, Your Highness." 20 years ago. "The siege of Orion's Rift, what were they like?" she asked, her voice trembling a little. He took a slow breath. "Imagine the dark itself being hungry. No face, no mercy. They don't destroy for war. They destroy because that's all they are." Lysera's heart tightened. "Did you win?" Hayes gave a small, sad smile. "We survived." "Sometimes that's enough." Silence filled the balcony. Outside, a faint red glow appeared on the horizon. The palace sensors hummed, detecting the first wave entering the system. The monsters were close. Lysera's long blue robe fluttered in the wind as she stepped closer to the glass. "Do you think we can stop them?" she asked. Hayes didn't answer at once. He looked at the stars, the same stars he had seen burn during humanity's last stand at Orion. "I don't know," he said finally. "But I know this. Running won't save anyone." Lysera turned to him. "You're not afraid?" He looked at her quietly. "Of course I'm afraid. But fear's only a problem if it stops you from doing what's right." Her lips trembled slightly. "You speak as if you've already accepted death." Hayes gave a faint shrug. "Death's an old friend, but it doesn't mean I stop fighting." For a moment, the young princess looked at the human soldier, a man from a small, fragile world that had faced the endless dark and still stood. She had heard stories about humans, reckless, emotional, always getting into trouble. Yet now she saw something different, a kind of strength that came not from power but from stubborn hope. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "Sergeant Hayes, when the monsters come, can I call you?" Hayes looked at her, surprised by the softness in her tone. Around them, other royal guards stood silently, pretending not to listen, but everyone's ears caught her question. The Princess of Valara, heir to 1,000 sons, asking a single human if she could call him when the world ended. For a moment, Hayes said nothing. His eyes drifted to the storm clouds gathering in the distance. He remembered the screams from Orion's Rift, the burning ships, the friends who never came home. Then slowly he turned back to her. "You won't have to call me, Princess," he said quietly. "I'll already be there." The guards froze. Even the wind seemed to pause. Lysera blinked. "You mean you'll fight for me?" Hayes's voice was steady, almost gentle. "For you. For your people. For anyone who still believes light can beat the dark." She felt a warmth in her chest, a strange comfort she hadn't felt in days. The humans had many flaws, she knew, but in that moment, she understood why her father respected them. They had courage, the kind that didn't need orders, the kind that came from the soul. A sudden alarm broke the silence. The palace's energy field flickered red. Distant explosions echoed from the city below. The monsters had arrived, shields failing. One of the alien guards shouted. Lysera looked up in horror as black shapes appeared in the sky, like living shadows, stretching and twisting, consuming the starlight. The city's ships rose to meet them, but their weapons barely scratched the surface of those dark giants. Hayes touched his wrist communicator. "Command, this is Guard Hayes. The capital's under attack. Evacuate the royal family immediately." Static answered him. Then a voice. "Negative, Sergeant." "The monsters are jamming communications." Hayes swore under his breath. Not a curse, just a quiet sigh of frustration. "Figures," he muttered. Then turning to Lysera, he said firmly, "Princess, we need to get you underground, now." Lysera's eyes were wide with shock. "What about you?" "I'll hold the entrance," he said, checking his plasma rifle. "Once you're safe, I'll follow." She shook her head. "No, you'll die." He looked at her calmly. "Maybe, but someone's got to keep the monsters busy." Tears shimmered in her golden eyes. "You can't fight them alone," Hayes smiled faintly. "That's what they said the last time. They were wrong." The palace shook as something massive hit the outer walls. Cracks spread across the marble floor. The alien guards rushed to form a defense line, their weapons glowing. Hayes stepped forward, standing before the princess like a wall of iron. He reached into his pocket and took out a small silver badge, the insignia of Earth's last fleet. He pressed it into her hand. "Keep this. It belonged to my commander." He used to say something before every battle. "Hope isn't given, it's made. Remember that." Lysera held the badge tightly. Her voice broke. "I will." "Good," Hayes said, turning toward the smoke rising from the halls. "Now go." She didn't move. "Sergeant Hayes," he looked back one last time, his face calm, his voice steady. "Tell your people, the monsters have never met humans like me." Then he stepped into the fire and was gone. Lysera stood frozen, staring at the door that had swallowed him. The roar of battle filled the palace, energy blasts, screams, collapsing walls. Yet in her heart, she felt something she hadn't felt before. Not fear, but belief. She looked down at the small human badge in her hand. It was warm from his touch. Outside the world burned, but somewhere out there, one human was holding the line for them all. And under the twin moons of Valara, the princess whispered a single promise to the stars. "When the monsters come, I will remember the one who didn't wait to be called." The halls of the Valaran palace were filled with smoke and fire. The air trembled as dark shapes tore through the walls. The once shining corridors turned into a battlefield. The monsters had entered. Princess Lysera ran through the golden passageways, surrounded by her guards. Her heart pounded, not only from fear but from the memory of Sergeant Daniel Hayes's last words. "You won't have to call me, Princess. I'll already be there." She still held the small silver badge he had given her. Its metal was warm against her palm, as if it carried the spirit of the human who had faced the dark alone. Outside, thunder shook the skies. The capital city of Valara Prime was under siege. Millions of civilians were fleeing to underground shelters while defense towers fired energy beams into the night. But the monsters were endless. Wherever light touched them, they turned it into darkness. In the lower halls, Hayes stood among the broken marble columns, his armor cracked, his plasma rifle glowing blue. He breathed heavily, scanning the smoke. Something moved, a shadow shifting like liquid. Then another, and another. He aimed his rifle. "All right," he said quietly. "Let's see what you've got." The first creature lunged, a black figure with no face, only a mouth of shimmering teeth made of light. Hayes fired. Blue energy tore through its chest, but the creature reformed, hissing. He switched modes on his rifle, growling, "Guess we're doing this the hard way." Every shot lit up the room like a storm. He moved with calm precision, firing, ducking, rolling behind shattered pillars. For every monster that fell, two more appeared. Yet he kept fighting, his determination stronger than fear. In the command bunker deep below, the Velaran Council watched the battle through trembling screens. One officer gasped, "He's still alive." "The human is still fighting." Another whispered, "It's impossible." The palace is overrun. Princess Lysera stood behind them, her eyes fixed on the main monitor. The image was blurred with static, but she could see him. One human against a sea of darkness. Her voice broke softly. "He's holding the line." An older general turned toward her. "Your Highness, we must evacuate." "The monsters will reach this level soon." Lysera's eyes hardened. "No, not yet." She looked back at the screen. "If he can fight, so can we." She pressed her hand on the communicator. "This is Princess Lysera. All remaining defense units regroup at the palace perimeter. Focus your fire on the central gate. Support the human guard. That is an order. There was silence for a moment, then a dozen voices responded at once. For the princess.
For Valara.
The command chamber came alive with motion. Soldiers ran to their posts. Energy weapons charged. The courage of one human had lit a fire in an entire world. Meanwhile, in the upper courtyard, Hayes took cover behind a fallen statue. His armor alarm blinked red, power almost gone. He checked his rifle. 4 shots left. He looked up at the burning sky. You just don't quit, do you? He muttered to the monsters. Fine, neither do I. Suddenly, the communicator in his ear crackled. Sergeant Hayes, this is the princess. Reinforcements are coming. Hold on, he smiled faintly. Didn't plan on doing anything else, Your Highness. He stood up again, reloaded, and charged forward. The monsters swarmed around him like a living storm. He shot, punched, kicked, using his armor's energy blades when the rifle ran dry. Each movement was desperate but precise, the rhythm of a soldier who had fought too many battles. He knew he couldn't win forever. But he wasn't fighting to win. He was fighting so others could live. From the horizon, bright streaks cut through the clouds. Velaran ships responding to the princess's order arrived in formation. Dozens of shining vessels rained light down upon the palace grounds. Explosions lit the night as the monsters screeched in pain. Hayes fell to one knee, exhausted. The ground shook beneath him, dust rising like fog. Through the smoke, he saw the princess's royal transport land nearby. The side door opened, and Lysera herself stepped out, wearing light armor, her golden eyes burning with resolve. He stared at her in disbelief. Princess, you shouldn't be here. She raised her plasma staff. Neither should you, Sergeant. Yet here we are. He wanted to protest, but when he saw the courage in her face, he simply nodded. Then let's make it count. Side by side, human and alien stood together against the oncoming dark. The monsters came again, hundreds of them, roaring and twisting like shadows given life. The two fought shoulder to shoulder, their weapons shining together in blue and gold light. Every strike from Hayes's blade, every blast from Lysera's staff, burned through the darkness a little more. Around them, Velaran soldiers rallied, shouting, For Valara! For the princess! The courtyard became a storm of energy. For the first time since the attack began, the monsters started to fall back. The creatures hissed, retreating into the shadows, confused by the resistance. But the victory was not yet won. The largest of the monsters, a towering figure of black fire and void, rose from the center of the battlefield. Its body was like a moving storm. Its voice echoed like thunder. Light cannot kill the dark, it boomed. Hayes looked up, his hand shaking. We'll see about that. He turned to Lysera. Aim for the core and the bright point in its chest. That's where its power gathers. She nodded, raising her staff. Together they fired. Blue and gold beams struck the creature's chest. It screamed, shaking the ground. The light began to tear through the darkness, splitting it apart. Hayes shouted, Now! All units, fire everything you've got. A storm of energy burst from the Velaran ships. The giant monster howled one last time, then exploded in a wave of blinding light that turned night into day. When the light faded, silence fell. The monsters were gone, only ashes and flickering shadows remained. Hayes fell to one knee, exhausted and bleeding from a cut on his forehead. Lysera ran to him, kneeling beside him. You did it, she whispered. You saved us, he gave a small smile. We saved us, Princess. Remember that. She looked at him with tears in her eyes. I will, always. The palace alarms finally went silent. The first rays of dawn touched the horizon. The long night was over. Hours later, the surviving soldiers gathered in the royal courtyard. The air smelled of dust and smoke, but the stars above seemed brighter than before. The princess stood before them, her voice steady but full of emotion. Our world was saved by courage, not by bloodline or birth, but by spirit. Sergeant Daniel Hayes of Earth showed us what it means to stand even when the night falls. Let all of Valara remember this name. She turned to him as the crowd bowed their heads in respect. Hayes looked uncomfortable under the attention. You don't have to do that, Your Highness, he said softly. Lysera smiled. Maybe not, but I want to. Then she looked toward the sky and added, Because someday when the monsters come again, I want the stars to remember who stood for the light. The crowd cheered. Soldiers raised their weapons in salute. For the first time in Velaran history, An alien world honored a human hero. Hayes stepped aside quietly, looking up at the sky. The twin moons shone brightly. He felt tired but peaceful. The darkness had been beaten back, not destroyed, but stopped. For now, that was enough. Lysera approached him once more. "Sergeant Hayes," she said gently. "You never answered my question fully." He looked at her curiously. "Which one?" She smiled softly. "If the monsters come again, can I still call you?" Hayes chuckled, his tired eyes warm. "Princess, if they ever come back, you won't need to call. Humanity will already be on its way." Lysera's smile widened. "Then I think the galaxy is safer than it was. Yesterday they stood together. Beneath the morning light, the human soldier and the alien princess, two beings from different worlds who had proved that courage knows no species, and far above the stars shone brighter, as if listening to their silent promise.